Is this weekend, actually, Saturday. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. If you'd like to go ahead and begin, let's just start.
Thank you. I originally written good morning, but I guess it's good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Chairman Salas and honorable committee members and staff members. My name is Dr. Stephen Phillips, and I'm the current president of the Board of Psychology. With me to my left is the board's vice president, Ms. Nicole Jones, and to my right is our executive officer, Antoinette Sorek. Joining us in the audience are some of the board's senior staff, including Assistant Executive Officer Jeffrey Thomas, Enforcement Program Manager Sandra Monterrubio, Licensing Coordinator Karen Johnson, Central Services Coordinator Jason Glasspiegel, and Continuing Education and Renewals Coordinator Jacqueline Noonan. The California Board of Psychology regulates psychologists, registered psychologists, and psychological assistants. Regulation of the profession in California began with the Certification Act of 1958. In 1967, legislation was enacted that protected the professional title of psychologist, defined the scope of practice, and required licensure in order to practice as a psychologist. Currently, the board has over 20,500 active and inactive licensed psychologists, approximately 1,600 registered psychological assistants, and nearly 300 registered psychologists. Psychological assistants and registered psychologists are doctoral level providers of psychological services to California consumers who act under the direct supervision of licensed psychologists and/or board-certified psychiatrists, while accumulating 3,000 hours of supervised professional experience necessary to become a licensed psychologist. The board itself is comprised of 5 licensed members and 4 public members. The relevant appointing authorities are the governor, the Senate Rules Committee, and the Speaker of the Assembly. Currently, the board has no member vacancies. Standing committees of the board are the Licensing Committee, the Outreach Committee, the Outreach and Education Committee, and the Policy and Advocacy Committee. The board has also from time to time established ad hoc committees and task force as needed. They currently include the Telepsychology Committee, the Enforcement Committee, the Sunset Review Committee, and the Applied Behavior Analysis Task Force. These bodies meet regularly, but on an as-needed basis. The current board authorization for staff positions is 20.3 full-time employees. The structure of the organization is comprised of 3 divisions: licensing, central services, and enforcement. Those funds expended, rather than coming directly from the general coffers of the state, are largely generated as a function of licensing and registration fees, as well as funds recovered in enforcement actions against some licensees and registrants. In accordance with the 2010 Consumer Protection Enforcement Initiative, the board collects and submits enforcement data to the Department of Consumer Affairs. This information is shared with the public and is designed to hold boards and bureaus accountable for their enforcement processing times. The Board of Psychology currently meets or exceeds all identified target measures except for Performance Measure 4, which deals with the length of time to conclusion of formal disciplinary proceedings. The processes related to this measure include the involvement of governmental bodies outside the board's control, such as cases referred to the Office of the Attorney General and the Office of Administrative Hearings. The board has taken proactive steps to confer with the Office of the Attorney General in order to establish greater monitoring of the times involved in each step of the process, with an eye towards substantial improvement in the board's performance on this measure. Major changes that have occurred since the last Sunset Review include the following. Number 1, relocation of our office to accommodate additional staff and to improve the functionality of the board's workspace. Number 2, obtaining budgetary authorization for and the subsequent hiring of additional enforcement personnel consistent with the mandates of the Consumer Protection Initiative. Number 3, obtaining budgetary authorization for and the subsequent hiring of additional licensing personnel to reduce the time needed for successful processing of licensing and registration applications, which I'm happy to tell you has been reduced from approximately 16 weeks to 2 or less weeks. Number 4, developing a new social media presence with the creation of a Facebook page, a Twitter feed, and a substantially more successful and user-friendly website, which features YouTube videos better explaining and illustrating board requirements and processes. Number 5, reinstituting a quarterly newsletter available in both printed and electronic forms for the benefit of consumers of psychological services, the board's licensees and registrants, and stakeholders, relevant stakeholder groups, in order to better educate and inform the readers regarding the laws and regulations governing the practice of psychology, along with anticipated legislative and regulatory changes. Number 6, creating a more user-friendly URL, more commonly referred to as a website address, that is more easily identifiable and therefore better accessible to the public. Number 7, developing a strategic plan that included specific action steps to meet identified goals and objectives with which the board and its staff is currently in almost complete compliance. And number 8, holding extensive committee and regulatory hearings on at least a quarterly basis for each of the standing committees to rationalize, more clearly explain, and begin the process of overhauling regulations formerly created in a piecemeal and sometimes confusing fashion. Newer issues and identified and being addressed in the sunset review process include, number 1, the move from a continuing education model to a continuing professional development model to better ensure the continuing competency of licensees within the scope of their respective practices. Number 2, expansion of the scope of psychological assistant practice more consistent with their roles and functions in their respective communities. Number 3, establishment of a retired license category. Number 4, removal of all reference to the commissioners on examination, an outdated term referring to practices no longer relevant to the board's licensing process. Number 5, potential regulation of applied behavior analysis. And number 6, increasing online consumer access to information regarding the board's licensees and registrants consistent with the practices of some other health science boards and bureaus, such as the California Board of Medicine. We thank you all for your time and consideration today, and to the committee staff in helping us to focus the information provided during this process and as is necessary to your deliberations. We are happy to answer any questions you may have regarding this brief overview or other issues of concern to the committee and its members. We hope that you will continue to support us in our efforts to effectively and efficiently protect consumers of psychological services in California.
Thank you.
I would now like to turn the proceedings over to Ms. Jones so she can speak to one of the issues that you've identified.
Please.
Good afternoon, Chairman Salas, committee members, and staff. I'm going to address the issue number 1 about the lack of mental health providers in certain communities. In February 2015, the Board of Psychology embarked on a 2-year Access to Mental Health Care in the State of California campaign. To date, the board has done 5 major activities. 1, we produced an article in the Winter 2015 Journal identifying licensed mental health professionals per county per capita. This journal, as Dr. Phillips mentioned, has a distribution of more than 15,000 per publication. The data has been shared with the Department of Consumer Affairs, the Health Professions Education Foundation, as well as the Senate Business, Professions, and Economic Development Committee and other interested members of the state legislature. 2, in spring 2015, the Board of Psychology produced an article entitled Educational Loan Opportunities for Mental Health Providers. 3, in August 2015, the Health Professions Education Foundation gave the board an overview of their program at our board meeting, which included an update on the fiscal health of that program and an overview on the process by which applicants can apply for loan repayment. The foundation agreed to make a presentation to our board annually to ensure that members of the board and our licensees were aware of their program. 4, in summer 2015, there was a profile of a recipient from the Health Profession Education's HPEF, Dr. Jason Outlaw, and in our summer journal. And going forward, the board wants to do a recipient profile in our quarterly journal as awards are given out from HPEF, again, as an opportunity to address more information on the HPEF program. 5, inserts will be included in all of our license renewal packets promoting the Health Professions Education Foundation. These inserts will instruct licensees on how to apply for loan forgiveness and how to contribute additional funds to the program. And additionally, the board plans to do the following: to develop an outreach plan for high school students and community colleges to encourage individuals to enter into the profession. 2, to develop telepsychology regulations, which will instruct licensees on how to provide telehealth to Californians, giving psychologists additional opportunities to provide care in underserved populations, or to underserved populations. Engage stakeholders to help the board promote entering the profession and the availability of the loan repayment program. And finally, to increase awareness regarding the loan repayment program. According to a recent survey conducted by the American Psychological Association of Graduate Students, the median loan debt of a recent graduate of a doctoral program is between $90,000 and $200,000 plus, depending on the program and the institution in which they graduated. The size of available awards under existing state programs are small by comparison, thereby reducing the potential incentive to locate in underserved communities. The average award for the HPEF program varies from $2,558 to $13,910, depending on the profession of the awardee. And it appears that the health of the fund cannot meet the demands of applicants who wish to serve in underserved communities. So I'll turn it back over to Dr. Phillips to address the other remaining issues.
Okay.
Thank you.
Issue number 2 related to the question of accreditation of institutions. And the staff made a particular recommendation looking to us, I think, for some guidance as to whether regional or national accreditation would be appropriate for purposes of any further legislation. And I'll give a slight bit of context for this. There are a group of graduate school programs in California that are called approved programs, which are neither regionally nor nationally accredited, but were grandfathered into the institutions which were eligible to send graduates to apply for licensure. That group of programs is now about 6 programs. Recently, the Board of, I always get this wrong, the Board of Private and Post-Secondary Education, is that good? Was the Bureau, the Bureau, made a move toward requiring national accreditation through the U.S. Department of Education. The Board of Psychology is open to a dialogue with the committee that would define the type of accreditation required prior to licensure. As we reported in our Sunset Review report, a requirement for regional accreditation would ensure the following 3 things: protection of the public by ensuring competent and predictable educational standards that would best protect consumers of psychological services in California, protection of students by guaranteeing that they are receiving degrees from programs that are best suited for providing competent services and providing adequate pathways to licensure, and third, protection of the licensee or all of our licensees by ensuring increased portability of the California psychology license. At present, it is difficult for some California psychologists, or we're put through additional hoops should we wish to become licensed in another state, because we are the only state, I believe, that has approved programs that are neither nationally or regionally accredited. The board as a whole has not formally discussed requiring regional versus national accreditation as a prerequisite for licensure. However, it has acknowledged the barriers identified in our Sunset Report to those individuals from schools which were not regionally accredited. So regional accreditation is the highest level of accreditation. National accreditation would be the second level of accreditation. And approved programs essentially have basically been grandfathered into the law. Assuming there's no particular questions on that particular issue at the moment, I can move on to continuing education briefly. I did mention or touch before on the fact that we were talking about moving from a continuing education model to a continuing professional development model. That's a model where you would still be able to take continuing education classes, but there would also be activities that would require more active participation, such as engaging in a peer consultation group, or seeking outside supervision on a particular case, or publishing an article in a journal, or teaching a graduate school class, or teaching a continuing education class. The board has submitted a legislative proposal to the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee to amend Section 2915 of the Business and Professions Code. This change would redefine continuing education to a continuing professional development model. The committee has graciously agreed to include this change in the board's sunset legislation. This model will allow licensees alternative ways to maintain competence, decrease isolation of some members of the profession, and enhance the probability that licensees will have to demonstrate their ongoing professional competence. Those were the three primary issues, I believe, that we were asked to address by staff.
So in conclusion, we want to take this opportunity to thank Chairman Salas, Chairman Hill, and committee members for this opportunity today. In the last 4 years, I have been fortunate to be part of the Board of Psychology, during which time it has become more involved with policy that has a direct impact on consumers of psychological services in California. As the chair of the Policy and Advocacy Committee, I would like to express the board's appreciation for the communication with the committee staff in developing changes to our statute that will be considered by this committee in the sunset legislation. These 5 changes to the Board's Practice Act are: 1, adding a definition for continued professional development, CPD; 2, expansion of psychological assistant practice areas; 3, establishment of a retired license category; 4, removal of reference to commissioners of examination; and 5, license lookup, allowing internet information on licensees. These changes will help support the continued competence of the profession while enhancing the board's ability to accomplish its goals and objectives identified in its strategic plan. I echo my colleagues' sentiment in requesting your support of the continuation of the current board, and I look forward to representing a public perspective in protecting consumers while supporting the board's mission of consumer protection and the evolution of the profession of psychology.
Thank you. Okay.
I have nothing to add.
They said it all.
Said it all.
She primed us well.
She primed you well. Well, good. No, I just wanted to touch on real quick, because we had talked about accreditation in some schools that are unaccredited. Why would students pursue one of the unaccredited schools if it's not recognized?
It's difficult to answer that question. I think that would depend on student from student. Some of the programs might provide more flexibility in the way that you obtain your graduate degree.
But the benefits would be different, or would they be the same?
The benefits are substantially different. You're not eligible, should you go through just an approved program which does not have regional accreditation. Remember that what the Bureau is looking for is national accreditation, but you really have to have regional accreditation in order to become a full member of the American Psychological Association, which is the national organization for psychologists. In order to go to any of the major predoctoral or postdoctoral internship sites, there's certain certifying bodies for internship sites, and none of the major certifying bodies will allow people from the approved schools to enter into any of those internship sites, make it much more difficult for them to obtain the necessary experience in order to become licensed. So it makes for a much more difficult pathway to licensure. And I think we've also supplied to staff and to the committee passage statistics relevant to national examinations, and those are disappointing for the approved but unaccredited programs.
Got it. Now, you also mentioned loan forgiveness for students and repayment programs. I mean, am I correct in assuming we have something modeled kind of like the Stephen Thompson program, where if you serve in an underserved area, then we offer those opportunities for loan forgiveness or repayment?
It's not a program that's operated by the board. It's the Health Professions Education Foundation that does provide some parameters around having to serve in underserved communities. And maybe Ms. Sorek can give a little bit more information.
Got it.
The mental health, the OSHPED operates two different loan repayment programs, one of which is the Health Professions Education Foundation, which is funded from Board of Behavioral Sciences and Board of Psychology, two of those programs. There's a $10 renewal payment that licensees pay into the fund, and that is what licensees apply to get that range that Ms. Jones talked about, $2,900 to about $15,000 of loan repayment. You have to serve in that designated area for 2 years, for 24 months, in order to get the loan repayment.
Got it.
But the underserved areas are areas in which it's particularly difficult to have a practice that would make it possible for you to meet your loan payments, because psychology graduate students leave with such large loan debt. So it's not a huge incentive to stay there after 2 years. So there might need to be an increase in the amount that they're offered. There might also need to be an increase in the amount of time that they would be required to be in those areas. We also do think it's promising, however, that the telepsychology regulations are being changed, which will allow distance psychological treatment, which will help to serve those areas sometimes better. Some counties literally have 0 psychologists.
Got it. No, I'm definitely interested in that. I represent a part of rural California as well, and telepsychology, teledermatology, and some of the others. I've seen them utilized. So as we continue to move into telepsychology, also had mentioned possible regulations or how we can further develop that. I mean, can you expand on that, or what we should be looking at?
Well, we're actually in the process of developing some telepsychology regulations, and Ms. Sorek may be able to add to this in addition to what I can recall about it. But we have to make certain determinations, such as that it's appropriate to do at a distance. There are some patients that need to be treated in person, perhaps because they're at a risk to themselves or a risk to others, or they won't react well to that particular forum. People have to be competent to do telepsychology, because it really is a very different form of treatment than that which we're usually trained to do in our graduate programs and our predoctoral and postdoctoral internships. We have to protect the privacy of the data, so we have to use, for instance, you would never be able to use something like FaceTime or Skype. In order to do that, you need to use particularly confidential and secure platforms that have been created for that purpose, sometimes at a cost, but that are HIPAA compliant. And then you also have to make sure that to the extent that any data is being stored, that it's being stored and encrypted in a way that it will not be obtainable without the consent of the client. So there's a lot of unique aspects to telepsychology that I think the field is currently grappling with at the national level, and we in turn are starting to attempt to deal with that at the regulatory level.
Given that this is a growing field for telepsychology, can you give me a sense of how many folks are getting service through telepsychology now, as we're looking to expand or maybe grow it and put some regulations around it so people are getting the care that they need and the level of care they need?
It's a very complicated issue, because now people want to do telepsychology across state lines So that would be, for instance, a New York provider providing services perhaps to somebody in Yolo County, California, that is not necessarily licensed to practice in the state of California. So that whole issue is being worked through on a national and state level. There are some proposed compacts around that need a lot of work. But that requires a lot of license portability, so there's questions as to how people will be certified to operate across state lines. So there's a myriad of issues that come out of telepsychology. Ends up being a surprisingly complicated subject to deal with. But thankfully, there are a lot of, I think, great minds working on it at the national and state level. And I think we will be able to pass some regulations that will be meaningful to our licensees, because at this point, our licensees aren't quite sure how well they're addressing those needs. But I don't think I answered your original question. How much are people doing this? I would say the average private practitioner, and I'm a private practitioner, so I'm more familiar with that practice, probably at any given point in time has clients that might be out of state on business or might be ill and at home. So they would be performing some form of telepsychology with them, or they have clients that have relocated to other parts of California at delicate points in the therapeutic relationship. So I would say that it's becoming a more common practice. I think there's always been some work by telephone. Now we're finding more work by televideo platforms. So I don't have exact statistics, but I would say it's happening increasingly. And our licensees would like guidance as to what's appropriate, which is why I think national organizations, state organizations, and the Board of Psychology are all trying to address that in a way that gives adequate guidance to the licensees and registrants.
And if I could just add, I think it's meaningful guidance for licensees as well as protection for our consumers. And so I think that is what our ad hoc committee is looking at right now, to see how we can develop regulations or ideas around that to be able to best serve consumers as well as to help provide licensees with the right guidance to do the work.
Okay, thank you. I'd be really interested in seeing what your committee comes up with. Just representing an area that utilizes some of those services and probably understanding technology a little bit more than probably some of the members here. So let me ask from the dais if there are any additional questions. Okay. With that, anything else you'd like to share?
No, just our thanks for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and bring up the second panel, which is panel B, or professional groups, organizations, and individuals.
But it'll come up at maybe the E at the end of the report.
Okay.